Hello, I'm Andrea Sankey, and welcome to this special edition of the Newsmakers, marking 5 years since Turkey's defeated coup. July 15th, 2016 is a date that changed Turkey. I'm here at this memorial site in Istanbul honoring the 251 victims who were killed that day. Their names are all inscribed inside this dome. Dozens of them were gunned down on the bridge behind me. It's now called the July 15th Martyrs Bridge, and it was in large part from where a rogue military faction tried to seize control and overthrow Turkey's democratically elected government. Now, just beside the memorial dome is this museum. It's called the Hafıza 15 Temmuz, and its message is written clearly behind me here in Turkish, Unutma, do not forget. And it's here where we can view the items, many recovered from the bridge, that tell the story. Here are the shoes of the victims, bullet casings, scrap metal, the mobile phone used by anchor Hande Firat, all visceral reminders of the carnage and the suffering of that night 5 years ago. A night when cars were crushed by tanks, when soldiers fired on their fellow citizens, and when people power prevailed as civilians risked their lives to defend their democracy. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll look at how the coup was quashed, its impact on the country, and find out what has happened to those responsible. But first, a look back at how that night unfolded 5 years ago.
Tanks and soldiers seized Istanbul's bridges. The parliament and presidential palace bombed from the skies. An anchor forced at gunpoint to declare the army was in control. A mutiny had emerged from the shadows and appeared to have won. But Turkey's president sent his own message to the nation.
Milletçe meydanlarda, havalimanında toplanalım ve bunların o azınlık grubu tanklarıyla, toplarıyla gelsinler, ne yapacaklarsa halka orada yapsınlar.
The tide turned. Thousands of people took to the streets, confronting soldiers face to face. Within hours, they surrendered. Their coup had failed. July 15th was a dark day for Turkey, but it was also celebrated as a victory. This was the country's first and only attempted overthrow that failed.
Turkey has a long and complicated history of military coups d'états. The army overthrew the government and took power 4 times since 1960.
The difference this time was that a secretive network led by exiled cleric Fethullah Gulen is thought to have been behind the coup. To the state, they're a terrorist network that had embedded itself into the organs of government. But the Turkish military's highest commanders were not involved. But stories of bravery live on. Stories of people like Safiye and the hundreds who lost their lives.
Well, joining me now to discuss the coup attempt and its aftermath 5 years later is Murat Aslan. He's a security researcher at the SETA Foundation and a former official with the Turkish Armed Forces. And Taha Meli Arvas. He is the vice chair at the Capital Markets Board of Turkey. Thanks both so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. Taha, I'm going to start with you because you truly witnessed the coup and its aftermath. You actually went and enmeshed yourself in a crowd really of thousands the night of July 15th. You went out to the airport after you'd seen what was happening on TV, and you heard the president's call to rally.
Right.
What actually drew you to take the risk? I mean, we have to remember the fighter jets were still flying overhead. The attempted coup was still underway.
Right.
What brought you out onto the streets?
I think I was initially more angry than anything, because you live in this country and you're witnessing an outside force attempting to overthrow the will of the people, really.
Here comes again, here comes, whoa. The F-16 just buzzed again.
It doesn't matter what political party you subscribe to, just to have a non-democratic move attempting to, it was a slap in the face to everyone. So I was kind of angered by it when I heard the president's call. I think it was just pure adrenaline at that point. I remember driving quickly to the airport, and then after that, at some point, you just automatic. You're there. You're in a crowd of people, trying to do whatever you can to stop this insult, really,
Right.
to the will of the people.
So not just that night, I mean, even the days after, as you said, it didn't matter your political affiliation. Talk about that sense of unity and what some had seen, especially from the outside, is this kind of, there were these political divides in Turkey that the foreign media especially
Right.
had highlighted, and suddenly you get out there and it's everybody.
Right. Very true. I think Turkey probably was never as united as it was after the 15th of July, the attempted coup. Because in the past, there have been several coups in Turkey, I think 4 before this 15th of July coup, but the populace really didn't respond. They didn't, either because the coups were, the timing, or the military was much stronger in their response. But here, everyone came together, and they kind of said no together, no to this, no to coups in general. I think people put their life on the line. You've seen the videos of people jumping in front of tanks, lying down in front of tanks. Hundreds of people dying during giving their life, really, to the democratic process. And so when you see, when I witnessed that, it's a great feeling to know that everyone's coming together, like I said, despite their political differences, in support of democracy.
Right. And Murat, I mean, you spent 27 years in the Turkish military. First of all, I mean, did you suspect anything like this could ever really happen? And what did it mean for you to see your brothers, actually, some of them, this faction, trying to do this in the name of your army?
Andrea, I have graduated military high school in 1987. Had an access in 1983. So between these 4 years, where there were some, students identified, cadets, military cadets, as parts of, a religious community, and they were deported from the army. I remember that. It was 1983, and just at the end of the second month in the preparation class. We were just learning English at that time. But we didn't know, exactly for what purpose they were in the army. But later then, it was identified that they were perfectly trained and educated to have an access to military. Well, 1980s, right after the coup in 1980, and there was an effort to infiltrate to the army. But as 1990s, knocked the door, these individuals who were not identified had positions in various army, appointments, offices, directorates, or departments. And the first issue that we had recognized at that time was that they were very selective to have a position. For instance, the ones who are responsible for appointing an officer to a certain position, or the ones who are responsible for countering any infiltration attempt. So by that way, they facilitated the coming generation of themselves to have more widespread presence in the army. And on July 15th, we have witnessed that they were successful, unfortunately, because they were pilots, they were commanders, they were, experts on certain skills. So they succeeded,
So what went through your mind? You were in Ankara when this happened. What went through your mind, first of all, when you saw the parliament bombed? And then did you realize at that time who was behind this?
We were suspecting some because it was clear from their behavior that they were stick to a certain belief, but it's normal because they may believe in something. On the other hand, most were covered, secret, and believe in me, for instance, they were swearing more than the others. They were drinking alcohol, even though, you know, in their beliefs it's forbidden though, they were drinking alcohol more than anybody else. Their wives were not representing a certain sect of a religion, but very modern. And when they were talking about politics, they were really liberal or sometimes a bit leftist in assessing the situations. So they were really skillful to cover themselves inside the army positions, army cadet.
Okay. Let's move forward now. 5 years later. Taha, do you think Turkey has achieved what it wanted to achieve then in securing the country and, you know, ensuring that what happened 5 years ago won't be repeated?
I think so. I think if a coup or an attempted coup were to happen again, I think you would see, because Turkey now has this experience, the Turkish people have experienced pushing back an attempted coup, standing up against armed the military or whoever, people who are attempting to overthrow the government. So I think Turkey will no longer have coups. Frankly, it's had a history of coups in the last 100 years, but I think the people have that taste of winning back democracy by their own hand. So I think it'll be very difficult for that to happen again.
What about the threat that existed 5 years ago? Is it still a threat?
I think so. I don't want to say there's no threat. I think the government has taken a lot of steps to root out those people who would do harm to the people and to the elected democratic process. But obviously, we don't know what we don't know. So
but as Murat knows well, they're not easy sometimes to identify. It's difficult to root out an organization.
He's talking about all this camouflaging and how they try to do the exact opposite of what people would expect of them, pretended to be something they weren't, so that they could stay camouflaged.
Right.
So in that instance, it's difficult to find those people.
But there's a difference between the civilian, sector and the military one. In the, some institutions of the state, they had infiltrated, but they were open. Everybody knew that they were loyal to Gulen. But in military, it's different. Because in military, you can't discuss ideology, you can't discuss politics, and you can't discuss any type of idea that will polarize the military society.
Okay.
So, and in the meantime, the agenda of the organization pushed them to stick with camouflage to cover themselves up.
Okay, we'll leave it there just for now. We'll be back with you in a few minutes because, as we know, by the morning of July 16th, the coup had been defeated. But the question is, what happened to those responsible? Now, in April of this year, life sentences were handed down to dozens of military personnel for their involvement. Several were convicted of violating the constitutional order, while others were found guilty of being members of an armed terrorist organization. Now, that organization is known here in Turkey as FETÖ. The leader is Fethullah Gulen, and he currently lives in the United States. Now, Turkey has made repeated requests to U.S. authorities to have him returned, and to this day, he has evaded extradition despite the evidence against him.
Fethullah Gulen denies any involvement in July 15th's coup attempt. But the Turkish government says much of the evidence against him lies in who was caught red-handed. On the night of the coup, well-known Gulenists were caught or known to have been at key sites. Theology professor Ardul Oksus, thought to be one of the main coup plotters, was taken into custody near Akinci Air Base on the night of the coup. Security camera footage also shows another civilian and known Gulenist, Kemal Batmas, at the Akinci Air Base on the night of the coup. Just days before the coup, Oksus and Batmas travelled on the same flight back from the US. On the night of the coup, plotters took over TRT broadcast, forcing the presenter to read a statement.
Türk Silahlı Kuvvetleri daha güçlü bir ilişki ve işbirliğini tesis etmek maksadıyla yönetime el koymuştur.
Security footage also shows other known Gulen associates fleeing the TRT building in Ankara on the morning of July 16th. Gulenists were also found to be directly involved in the evening's combat, with a police officer, once dismissed because of suspected Gulen links, Mithat Aynanca, caught by civilians inside an army tank. To the state, the evidence against Gulen and his followers is clear.
Well, Taha, Meli, Arvas and Murat Aslan join us again to talk further about what has happened to those responsible for the events of 5 years ago. Murat, I'll start with you this time. You know, there was a lot of coverage, especially in the foreign press, about what they were labeling a purge. And it made it sound as if there were thousands of, people being persecuted, journalists included. But then later there were questions as to, actually, were they really journalists? Who were these people that they were taking in? Tell us, what is the result 5 years later of what happened?
Okay, right after the coup attempt, there was a wide-scale intelligence effort to identify exactly who had been involved directly, who had participated to what, who had contributed, who are the members of the organization. And also there are significant cases. They are not the members, but they were in the coup, inside the coup. It's still a crime, because if there's a coup attempt and you are part of it, even though you are not a member of the organization, then you are part of it. So this intelligence effort was totally directed by the prosecutors. Meanwhile, as the individuals participated, the overall incidents are identified, even through video footage or photo images, or sometimes people just said, okay, this guy was involved. Then first they were arrested, they were under custody, and there was a process in the courts. And the norms were really observed during the overall process. That was my impression during these times, because they had the right to defend themselves. And also the judges were not in a hurry, were not in a rush to decide exactly to what sentence they had to be charged. On the other hand, well, they were covered and they were individuals not identified well, and intelligence efforts were in an attempt to identify solid proof of their membership to the organization. So it was a complicated and a long process.
Right.
In the meantime, when all these individuals were arrested, then there had to be a program to refresh the army and the institutions affected because of lacking personnel.
And how did that go?
Well, if you identify all these individuals, it will take not only several years, but many years. Think that there is a series of positions in a hierarchy. So if you want to fill them up, you have to have first a 4-year education for the officers and 2 years for the NCOs, and they will start to the profession, just from the very starting point as lieutenant or corporal. Then if you have a colonel, a major, a captain, then you should wait like years, 10 years, 15 years.
Okay. I also have to ask you, though, about those who actually managed to flee. We saw a number, for example, run to Greece, where many suspect they're now, in a sense, being used as political leverage of sorts to agitate Turkey. What is happening with them?
Well, they fled. And some of them succeeded, some of them, just spotted across the border. But the issue was that they had enjoyed protection in the countries that they had applied for a residence.
Okay.
The second issue that is really important, in Turkish mind, conspiracy theories started. Think that as far as the number of people increased in the United States, in Europe, now people said, okay, it's the USA behind this coup attempt because they were in the United States.
Yeah.
So it was a danger.
Right. Taha, I want you to talk a little more about that. I mean, let's just say you do not achieve what Fethullah Gulen managed to achieve in the United States if you don't have friends with the right political connections. I mean, we know members of the Gulen Network and Fethullah Gulen himself gave, upwards of $2 million to Clinton's own campaign, that there were a number of investigations in the U.S. media into these mysterious donations to other senators and House representatives from members of the Gulen Network. How much do you think, first of all, it's overall now affected the Turkey-U.S. relationship? Because, let's be honest, if Fethullah Gulen were to be returned to the United States, or to Turkey for trial, he would be able to expose how many politicians were compromised in dealings with the Gulen Network, especially when it comes to the charter schools of the United States. Hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars.
Right, right. So I think campaign finance is something that is on the minds of a lot of Americans, especially when it comes to politicians and their constant need to raise money for elections. As you know, Congress is elected every 2 years, so they're constantly raising money. So this leaves, unfortunately, Congress people, senators, in search of donations.
Right.
So this, at times, leads to them to accept money from sources that they normally wouldn't associate with. This includes, as you mentioned, the former President Clinton and I think the Clinton Foundation, etc. So if you essentially, if you have enough money, you're able to buy influence. This isn't a secret. Everyone knows this. This goes from big tobacco to big pharma to big oil, whatever. So if you're an organization with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, as you mentioned, from the taxpayers, no less, then you're able to buy influence. This is a sad fact about the political apparatus in many countries, but specifically the United States. So as a result, you can see how if you have enough money, you can shield yourself from the long arm of jurisdiction or the long arm of justice, if you will, of extradition. So that explains it, kind of.
And you think that's what he's done, or that's what the network has been able to do?
Yeah. If you have enough money, you can you can do that, and that appears to be the case.
Because why not? Why is it worth sacrificing a stronger relationship with an ally as important as Turkey to protect this man and this network?
That's the billion-dollar question right there. I mean, is there something else that we don't know? I mean, what else could there be? On the surface, it appears to be, like I said, these political donations. If you donate to enough congressmen and senators, then at some point the administration doesn't want to take the risk of falling out with these politicians. And that's what it appears to be, frankly. I mean, you don't have to really search, you don't have to really dig deep, you don't have to believe in conspiracy theories to see this is a common thread in a lot of cases, and this is one of those cases.
Murat, go ahead. And I mean, do you think top members of the Gulen Network, Fethullah Gulen himself, might ever actually return to Turkey to face trial here?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But I would like to add something, because we have to understand exactly what this organization stands for. It's a multinational organization. They were organized in 142 countries, and they had different branches like human resources, through, specially built schools. They had business circles creating an economy of themselves, and the ones who want to benefit from this economy had to pledge. In the meantime, there was a political dimension, not only in Turkey, but also in Africa, in Central Asia, and also in the United States, and also Europe. And another one is much more dangerous. It's academic dimension. I had read an article of a member of them. It was criticizing Turkey. Well, they have a right to criticize, whoever they want. But think that in this paper, they had referred to an organization in Norway, another organization in the UK, another one in the Bangladesh or India or another country. But all of the organizations referred was their organization. Mm-hmm. So they were confirming their worldview just by, referring the same individuals with different products. Okay. So if it's a kind of life cycle, well, they will prefer to stay in the countries that they have roots and will try to do the same thing as they did in Turkey. Okay. And it's a danger.
Okay. Murat, I will have to give you the last word. I'd like to thank both of you so much for being with us. And thanks, of course, for watching this very special edition of the Newsmakers from Istanbul on the 5th anniversary of Turkey's defeated coup. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.